Thanks, Joao. Well, everyone, welcome to the GNDR Global Summit and to this session, which is entitled Risk Informed Urban Development Planning City for Multiple Risk Drivers. It's a quite interesting topic because, as we all know, more than 4 billion people are now living in urban areas. That is more than half of the world population. And the urbanization process of the world is expected to continue and actually accelerate in the near future. So that is the location where, again, the majority of the human population lives, and it's important for us to understand how risk manifests and how we can manage that in such environments. Adding to that, 1 in 4 people living in cities actually live in slums, meaning that they lack access to improved water or improved sanitation, that they live in inadequate poverty housing, and that they have a high exposure to disaster risk and the impacts of the changing weather patterns. As we all understand, urbanization is considered one of the most important risk drivers, along with climate change, gender inequality, forced displacement, conflict, and food and water insecurity. This session, then, we will try to examine how these drivers of risk create an impact and erode household and community resilience. The panelists that we have now will provide their ideas, their strategies, and examples on how to meet the challenges imposed by these risk drivers. And they will have a vision of work led by local actors and stakeholders in the pursuit of urban resilience. So it is my pleasure to introduce our panel. First, we will hear from Mohammed Noor Ibrahim. He is a human rights and protection specialist with 9 years of experience and is based in Somalia. He works in child protection, gender-based violence, and humanitarian programs. And his expertise is in strategic planning, capacity building, and in the implementation of projects that protect and empower vulnerable communities. Mohammed will introduce us to the topic and will introduce strategies that can enhance risk-informed urban planning. Next, we will hear from Amare Mola Dinku. He is an academic member at Wolo University in Ethiopia and is currently a doctoral student at the University of Louvain in Belgium. His work focuses on food security, urban food systems, and agricultural economics, examining links between food systems and socioeconomic factors in urban settings. He has published articles on urban food insecurity, dietary diversity, and value chains in accredited journals. Alongside his research, he engages in extracurricular activities with local and international NGOs, contributing to policy and practice on sustainable systems. Amare will be presenting a case that advocates for gender-responsive urban food systems that centralize women's empowerment. He will examine land rights and how integrating gender into urban planning and fostering peer learning networks can help potentiate food security, economic resilience, and inclusive community-led governance. And last but not least, we will hear from Ronja Winkart-Entz. She is a research associate at the German Committee for Disaster Reduction. She is based in Bonn, Germany. And the German Committee for Disaster Reduction is the largest platform for disaster risk reduction in Germany, bringing together different stakeholders with the vision of creating a resilient society through sustainable crisis and disaster risk preparedness. Ronja will be presenting on how risk communications support people and communities in implementing risk-informed urban development. As panelists speak, I would like to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, to please post the questions in the chat so we can discuss later after the panelists have finalized their presentations. Thank you again for your interest in this session and for joining. And now, without further delay, I want to introduce Mohammed for his presentation. Mohammed, the floor is yours. You are on mute. Okay.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Bismillah. Hello. First, I'm very happy to be part who is presented by the presentation about risk-informed urban development plan cities for multiple risk drivers. Before I am greeting all of you who is organizers, who is will be presented by the following presentation. My name is Mohammed. I am from in Somalia. Today I want to highlight this subject called by the risk-informed urban development plan cities for multiple risk drivers. Next. Okay. Content is the risk plan urban is consists of that I want to explain three contents. One, introduction to risk-informed urban development. Two, understanding multiple risk drive and urban environmental. Three, strategic for risk-informed urban planning. These three contents, each I will be explained by the following sessions. Next, one, introduction to risk-informed urban development. It is next. Thank you. Definition and scope. Definition and scope is consists of three: definition, scope, and objective. Definition of the integrated to risk analyze and urban planning to promote resilience against natural and man-made hazards. Man-made hazards is faced by the many countries in Africa. Second, scope include this preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery to address risks such as climate change, pandemic, and technological dispersed objectives to develop sustainable urban development that balance safety, growth, and resource management and effective. Next, importance of risk-informed planning consists of three. Number one, urban resilience, proactively identifying and mitigating risks, help citizens weather storm and recover from disaster, reducing loss of life, property damage, and economic disruption. Number two, sustainable growth, balancing development goals and with the risks consideration prevent unsustainable expansion into hazardous areas such as floodplains and sense zones. Number three, climate adaptation. Climate adaptation is a risk-informed approach to enable cities to adapt to climate-related challenges. For example, rising sea levels, extreme weather events, by prioritizing adapt infrastructure and policies. Next. Okay. Key principles, and also it consists of four. One, risk assessment, stakeholder cooperation, flexible and adaptation, equity focus. The first risk assessment conducting through hazard, vulnerability, and capacity analysis is essential for informed decision making in urban planning process. Stakeholder collaboration is engaging governance, private sectors, and local communities fosters sharing accountability and ensuring that diverse perspectives are incorporated into planning strategies. Number three, flexible adaptation. And also flexible adaptation is planners must remain dynamic, incorporating news data and evolve risks, ensure relevance and effectiveness over time. The last, equate focus. Addressing the disproportion impact of the risks on vulnerable populations ensure inclusive and just urban development strategies. Next, this is our strategy. Okay, the next content is about is understanding multiple risk drivers in urban environments. Next, natural hazards. This is shows for these pictures as example for the three natural hazards. The three hazards is it was Paris or hurricanes. Number one, create structure resilience through building codes and infrastructure design. Number two, floods. Develop sustainable drainage system and flood risk management frameworks. Hurricane, implement advanced weather monitoring systems and disaster preparedness measurement. Next. Okay, socioeconomic factors. Socioeconomic factors consists of three flows. Number one, inequality. Inequality disparities in wealth, housing, quality, and access to resources, leave marginalized communities disproportionately exposed to risk. Number two, urbanization trends and also rapid unplanned expansion worsens risk exposure by the concentrating population in areas prone to hazard, often with a limited infrastructure. The last, resilience gaps. The resilience gaps is socioeconomic instability undermine a city stability to recover from the disaster, prolong the recovery timeline, and leaving vulnerability. Next, technological risks. Technological risks about three. Okay, infrastructure fragility. Failure in the social system like power, water, and transportation can compound natural and socio-economic vulnerability during crisis. Number two, cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity threat is increasing reliance to smart technologies, expose sites to risk like hacking or system disruption, jeopardizing critical urban operations. Last, interconnectivity risks. The interconnectivity risks in nature of modern urban systems can lead to concerted failure where on breakdown trigger broader infrastructure causing equals. Next, the last contents is strategies for risk-informed urban plan. Next. Number one, risk assessment and analysis, hazard mapping, vulnerability analysis, scenario modeling, and participatory assessment. Hazard mapping is identifying high-risk areas, bronze, natural hazards, for example, floods, earthquake, landslides, for informed zoning and policy decisions. Vulnerability analysis, evaluating social and economic factors to understand which population and assets are most exposed and least able to recover. And also scenario model. Scenario modeling is using predictive tools to simulate disaster impact and guide long-term urban development decisions. And the last is participatory assessment is and also engaging local communities and risk evaluation process to incorporate life experience and foster grassroots prevalence. Next. Building resilience. The building resilience is four. Number one, resilience, climate response planning, early warning system, capacity building. Is utility equipped with withstand hazard through updated codes and updated materials, and also climate responsive planning, incorporating green spaces, flood banks, and stormwater systems to manage environmental risks effectively. Third, establishment communication network for rapid dissemination of disaster alert to safeguard urban population. And the last, capacity building. Capacity building is strengthening institutions and policies to enable effective response, recovery, and preventive measurement. Okay, preventive and measurement in urban management. Thank you. Next. Stakeholder collaboration. Okay, the last session. Okay, stakeholder collaboration, governance, governance engagement, community participation, private sector input, cross-sectoral cooperation. Next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you for introducing us to the topic of risk drivers and some of the strategies that we can use to meet those challenges. We will be discussing a little bit more during our Q&A, but now I want to call up Amare to do his presentation on gender-responsive urban food systems for resilient city, and take a look at the example that he will present. Amare, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mario. Thank you for letting me to be here also, because it is my pleasure to be here as an academician also, because as I listen from your background, you are mostly out of, I think, out of the academy. I mean, you are in the practical sessions of NGOs and the like. So thank you so much for having me here. My presentation is on gender-responsive urban food system for resilient cities, and mainly I will focus on the food issues in the urban area, because food is very important for the growing population who are living in urban settings. So can I go to the next slide, please? So my presentation will focus broadly into issues. The first one is the introduction. I will explain why we focus on urban resilience and what are the urban challenges currently we are facing, and what are urban and pre-urban agriculture can play as a role in terms of integrating gender and food in the urban agriculture issue, and what strategies can support us in the future to grow this urban agriculture issue in the way of that, including gender equity. And I will conclude and pick some takeaway points for this presentation. Can I go to the next slide, please? So I start my presentation with this issue. I mean, this is a report by high-level panels of experts outed in the 2024, which is very inspiring and very wonderful issue that shows us a very huge number here. As you can see, the poverty and urban food insecurity is changing the dimension to urban and pre-urban areas. In the world, as the world become more urbanized, poverty and food insecurity is growing. As you can see, 76% of the world population who are food insecure moderately or severely are urban residents. So focusing on urban issue is very important because not only the population expands in the urban area, but food insecurity and other problems are also expanding in the urban area. Can I go to the next, please? So as urbanization rises up, rapid urbanization brings both opportunities and challenges in general, but here I can focus on the challenges. It intensifies food insecurity in urban areas, and it also deepens gender inequality and unequal access of basic services in terms of, for example, land and other resources for women are also scarce here. Especially every evil is in the world when there is flood, when there is war, when there is conflict also in general, women are facing huge challenges, and the disabled people and minorities are facing huge challenges in urban area as well. For example, in our case, currently there is urban infrastructure development in the big cities in Ethiopia. So there is forced displacement of people in the slum areas. So there is no well-established system that absorbs these people. So they are suffering in such a way. So traditional urban planning also ignores also the food issue. People are migrating from rural to urban area. They are living in urban area, but the food producers are coming to the urban area, and the food issue is critical in these times of conflict nowadays. So producing food inside the city is important because when the way is blocking, for example, we cannot access food. Can I go to the next slide, please? So as you can see here, urbanization brings a lot of challenge, but as a student also here, does urban agriculture serve as a resilience mechanism for urban food challenges? My answer is yes, because since the early 1990s, the issue of urban and pre-urban agriculture are getting attention. It is also our recent history that during COVID-19, when the way is blocked or when the supply chain is blocked, some fresh vegetables and fruits are also sourced from urban areas. When the conflict is happening also, food is required. So if we can produce food in the urban area, it can be a resilience source for our community to eat. And other market shocks as well affects our urbanization issue. So here, urban and pre-urban areas are long history of providing food. For example, in terms of in the time of World War II also, there was urban food gardens in Europe also. That was a resilient area. For example, a victory garden in UK, I have read that was a very important point that after the war, the people were practicing agriculture inside the urban areas. And in the time of COVID-19, it has also a lot of contribution in feeding the local population. Even this time also there is a problem of war in Middle East, which affects our food supply. So producing local food is inevitable option for our future sustainability in urban areas. Can I go to the next slide, please? So urban agriculture is more than just because it is preferred. It's not only because it produces food. It is just beyond producing food. It is a tool for urban resilience in terms of, for example, it reduces food miles, lowers urban heat, and provides buffer against global supply chain shocks. And it have also livelihood options. For example, globally, about 200 million people are employed in urban agriculture. And it supplies also almost 800 million people in the urban areas. This is a very huge number. Socially, also, it has a social cohesion role. For example, it has the educational role in the community. For example, in urban areas, children, women, and adults are also engaging in food production. So it connects people and nature in general inside the urban area. So it is transforms underutilized urban spaces into productive community hubs. So it's important to look the other dimensions of producing food in the urban area. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, but still, my focus is also here. Majorities of the urban farmers are women in the world also, but they predominate still the subsistence production practice in the urban area, and men play a greater role in commercialized urban farming. Planners often prioritize commercial production, and women's contribution to household food security become invisible in the policy. So even though urban agriculture provides a lot of contribution to the urban community, its impact in terms of gender equity is still there is a lot of gap. I mean that women are huge contributors in terms of labor, but they are not included in the policy, and they are not also safeguarded by resource allocation in terms of land access, credit access, and other access are also not provided for women farmers in urban areas. So can I go to the next slide, please? They face structural barriers in general in terms of land, credit, even also in terms of recognition, and their ability to scale up this commercialized farming is also limited because of these structural barriers. So urban setting offers somewhat more flexible in terms of gender role compared to that of the rural areas. Inequality in the agriculture in urban agriculture is also still persisting. Can I go to the next slide, please? So I see here, however, food insecurity and gender equity are not separate goals. If we are prioritizing producing food in urban areas, unless and otherwise we consider the equity dimensions, I mean the gender dimensions of food production, food retailing, accessing of resources, we cannot achieve food security. That means zero hunger, for example, and without involving women, because when you see also in the world larger, I mean, equally, half share of the world population is women. So they are also involving in huge production and trading practices in urban slums, for example. Roadside foods are also prepared by women. So we have to include these policies, I mean gender sensitive policies in urban food system in general. Can I go to the next slide, please? So we cannot achieve sustainable urbanization or resilient food system in general without placing women's empowerment at the core of urban policies, either in production or in the other trading sectors in general. Can I go to the next slide, please? So here are the strategies that can address or that can fill in the future, especially in my presentation. Redefining roles is also very important. That means viewing women beyond food producers. They are also traders and vendors. They are also knowledge breakers and leaders in urban food governance in general. And second, acknowledging women's contribution is also very important. That means to urban agriculture and to the local economy, securing women's right to urban space and plot is also very important. Third one is ensure fair gender sensitive access to market and resource so that the labor translates into real economic benefits. So NGOs and other sector who are acting towards resilient cities, it's very important to consider this issue. That means integrating gender perspectives into urban planning to reduce time burdens of women. What I see here is also, for example, in urban agriculture, have no also policies in many countries, including my country. There is no urban agriculture policy, let alone to integrate women or a gender issue in the policy. The policy itself is not also enacted, but still urban agriculture provides 90% of leafy vegetable supply in my city here, as my research indicates, also our research indicates in last time. So urban agriculture still provides a lot of resource to the community, but it cannot provide also sufficient attention. It cannot get sufficient attention from the policy domain, and women are also excluded. Can I go to the next slide, please? So in my conclusion point is urban resilience is impossible without political action. I mean, when I say political here, it is about the policy issue or the government's commitment to provide a policy, or like just to include gender empowerment issues. Action-oriented, that means build sustainable cities. We must move from political commitment to gender-led urban planning as also very important. Can I go to the last slide, please? So the main takeaways here is like shift women from food producer to primary decision maker in urban food system is important. And knowledge hub, I mean, use peer networks to scale skills, production, processing, and marketing. I mean, there are a lot of people who are practicing urban agriculture among different settings. For example, in my city here, there are 3 types of urban agriculture. There is productive safety nets, supported production system is there, peri-urban agriculture, which is more commercial, and there is also home garden. And these 3 typologies have also different distinct roles and contributions to the food system in general. So there must be a platform and a way that people can interact together so as to speed up their production process and contribute more. And strengthen local social networks to improve community resource management is also very important. I think here is also the mandate of global networks of disaster risk reduction. So the food issue is very important, and it is becoming alarming risk also. Promoting and advocating urban food production in big cities around the world is also should be one strategy in the future. Thank you so much. This is my presentation, and I hugely take my presentation from our recently published paper and from high-level panels of experts, which was produced in 2024. Thank you so much. This is the last of my presentation.
Thank you, Amare. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Some concepts that are not very commonly heard, especially that nexus that you were discussing between food and gender. It's quite interesting. I think it brings up a number of issues and a number of questions, particularly in urban settings. We're going to move on to Ronya and her presentation on risk communications. And I am encouraging all the audience, if you have any questions, please start writing those in the chat so we can have a productive discussion after this last presentation. So Ronya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mario. So in rapidly growing urban areas, so communities face complex overlapping risks, just the ones we are talking about in this session. So forced displacement, eviction, climate impacts, unsafe housing, and shrinking civic spaces. And yet many of the residents living in all these different areas receive risk from information in ways that are inaccessible, uninspiring, or impossible to act upon. So flyers alone do not create resilience. And in dense urban areas, environments, including the informal settlements, like Mario said in the beginning, risk communication must be creative, trusted, community owned, and adapted to local realities. And before we dive into the topic of risk communication, I would quickly present you my organization, which you can see on the next slide, where risk communication is one big pillar of our work. So our vision is to create a resilient society through sustainable crisis and disaster risk reduction. And this is what we do through our mission of promoting a network, providing action-oriented advice, initiating dialogues, store and communicate the knowledge, as well as research and communication as such. And DKKV as such is more than 30 years now the largest platform in Germany and an umbrella organization bringing together the science, practice, administration, and politics. So you see, communication also between different actors is very important for us. And we have three main activities around networking, consulting, and knowledge transfer. So all there behind risk communication is a big topic. So on the next slide, we look into why risk communication matters for urban development. It's crucial or a fundamental piece of risk-informed urban development because it supports everyone, but also displaced and marginalized communities to understand their right, early warnings, and the hazards they are threatened to. It strengthens collective action and advocacy for housing and land tenure, for example. It builds trust between CSOs and the communities itself, and it encourages inclusive participation in urban planning and preparedness process. So people cannot claim for their rights to protect themselves or prepare themselves for disasters if they cannot understand or if they don't receive risk information in an early stage. So on the next slide, you shortly see the difference between risk communication and crisis communication. We speak about risk communication before the disaster. So it's a real-time exchange of information, advice, opinions between experts and officials who face and the people who face a threat from the hazards to their survival, health, economic, or social well-being. And crisis communication starts in the moment of the disaster itself. So it refers to the sharing of information with people and organization during an emergency or disaster situation. So let's stick to risk communication. And on the next slide, we see different categories of risk communication methods, materials, and tools. In one of our projects, we gathered and collected all these different best practices from around the world and gathered them in those 20 categories. As we don't have too much time today, we're only going to dive into 4 of them. And on the next slide, you see that we start with the first one of one more on documenting disaster memories. Here's the example from Germany. It's about flood marks, which are on the walls, for example, of houses. So there is a little picture where you can see the numbers 1804 and 1910. These were the years where this region had 2 big floods. And even though there are no people living anymore who experienced these floods, people are still reminded of this flood. So this is a good idea to keep memory alive. Let's dive into the next one on the next slide. One more, exactly. It's indigenous and local knowledge. We have collected one example from New Zealand. So the Maori, they have obviously traditional knowledge and also about the early warning about any activity for their volcano. So the idea is to include this local knowledge on in like observing the changes in the flora and fauna together with the seismic activities that can be measured with technology. So the suggestion here is that everyone can compile and create a compendium of existing indigenous and local knowledge on disaster risk preparedness in their own countries, looking like including the communities from a beginning on through the mobilization, which is a key factor for risk communication, bottom-up approaches, and also the importance of addressing the layers in the community always in their cultural context. Then let's dive into the next one, which is IEC materials, standing for Information, Education and Communication. Here, I brought you a guide for planning ahead of crises and disasters from the authorities in Germany. I will post the link in the chat so that you can dive yourself through the little guideline. And it's really nice because there are a lot of pictures inside, and it's explained how people can prepare better for disasters beforehand. The last one on the next slide is on serious games. I don't know if you ever heard about that method. It's an attractive method of risk communication and kind of innovative method that has growing interest. There are digital and analog games. I brought you today a digital one, which is called Stop Disaster by UNDR. So you can play it online, and every player makes a planning and preparedness decision to protect their community before the disaster strikes. So it teaches you how choices about building, land use, early warning, and preparedness directly shape the disaster outcomes. So feel free to dive into that game after today's summit is over. But we at DKKV, as you can see on the next slide, next slide, please. Yeah, is a huge topic at our organization. So we use it a lot because it's an objective and calm way to transmit risk perception. It's an established way and appropriate way to improve the risk culture. The development is always target group oriented, and we realize the things, for example, in research projects like MyRisk, which always look into risk communication as well in a way of supporting risk-informed urban development. And I guess with this, I'm already at the end of my presentation. There is only to say that risk communication is not a nice add-on. It's rather a transformative tool to strengthen urban resilience. And when communities or communication, more than nothing, go beyond than just flyers and like not so inclusive methods, when it becomes participatory, so that way creative and inclusive, it does more than just inform. It empowers the people and the communities to shape their cities and defend their rights and build resilience from the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronja, very much for your presentation. It shows the importance of having proper communications and ways of doing it, making it inclusive, so everybody living in urban areas can get, accurate information that can enhance resilience.
Exactly.
And we all know how difficult it is when the messages are not the right ones, and create a number of problems, within our communities. With that, I want to thank you, our three panelists, and I would like to open it for questions. I'm looking at the chat in case there is any specific questions. I am not seeing any specific questions, but I'm seeing a very interesting comment from Vera, talking about peer networks, the way peer networks strengthen local social networks. Vera, would you like to expand on your comment, or is there something that you would like to ask about any of the presentations?
Vera, if you want to join us, please, on the top right of the screen, join stage, and then I allow you, you can do your comment if you want to extend a little bit.
Yeah, I'm seeing Vera wrote in the chat, is there any example that Amare can bring on the networks? So Amare, this is a question for you. It's related to peer networks, maybe working in the topic that you were presenting about urban agriculture. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting comment, and I like that also. It's to mean that urban agriculture is also conducted in different settings with different interests as well. Some use for large scale, for example, commercial. The other may produce for medical plants. The other may produce also for food consumption, own consumption. So it have different scale in terms of, for example, who are the producers. When you see their children at school, mothers at home, or merchants in the peri-urban areas. So they have different experience, they have different skills, and they have different ambitions in general. So, but there is no way that connects these different platforms or knowledge into one, and there is a need for just connecting these people together so they can share, they can learn each other, and they can contribute more what they are doing currently.
Thank you, Amare. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. This is the opportunity for you, the audience, if you want to post any questions to a specific panelist or a question in general. I do see a comment about the difficulty of getting funding for DRR. That's not on the topic that we're discussing, but I think it's a very relevant issue at the moment. I think we're all experiencing, the constraints in funding, not only for DRR, but for everything that relates to civic space. So it's a trend indefinitely that we need to be meeting that challenge and becoming more creative and innovative in the way that we finance any program that has to do with, civic society. I think we all recognize the challenge. I wanted to go back to you, Amare, again, in the concept that you introduced between the nexus between food and gender, between food security and gender equality. That was quite interesting proposition to me. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is generally like any development activity or any food security activity is just a development activity. So we cannot achieve this food security issue without involving women. That means it will be one wing. I mean, we cannot fly with one wing. So if we cannot balance the issue of gender equity and the food security programs, achieving sustainable and resilient cities in the future is impossible. So women are a huge food producers both in urban areas. They are contributing in tendering or vendoring or selling processed food or unprocessed food in the markets, in the big markets, in the Sunday markets, but they have no sufficient environment to exercise their skill and to show their experience in general. So there must be supportive policies. For example, women are in burden, for example, in productive activities at home and reproductive activities. So there must be enabling environment. For example, technology should support them so that they can reduce their time poverty and they can engage in urban agriculture in general, or they have to be empowered in terms of land security. I mean, urban lands are mostly fragmented and they are raised for bids just for collecting money for the city mayor, and there is no very good land planning in my country, in my city, for example. There is no urban land allocated inside the city. So mostly urban agriculture is informal and the trading is informal. So informal jobs are also given for women. So any development without involving women, without the comforts of women, will not be a full development in general.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, there needs to be a policy-driven effort, to make it more effective. Ronya, I wanted to ask you, out of the different categories of risk communication, of all the methodologies that you presented, which one would you consider to be the most impactful or efficient? You talked about documenting the disaster memories, IEC materials. You introduced us to a game, but if you had to choose, which is the one that would have the most widespread impact in terms of communicating, the messages that we need to communicate to the population in order to enhance resilience?
I think it's hard to choose the one. I would say it's rather a mixture. And if I had to choose, I would always go for that one that is community owned, so that the people on the ground, the local people, are involved in the risk communication design. So that it's really targeted and that people understand that they can put in themselves into the discussion, and then that they then also, when it changes from risk to crisis communications, that they know what to do in a disaster.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're running out of time, but one last question for Mohammed. I would like to ask you, Mohammed, if you speaking of the risk drivers that you mentioned in your presentation, which one is the one that you consider has the most is the most challenging in terms when it comes to urban environments? We understand there are a number of things, but particularly in Somalia, in your country, where there is a lot of displaced population, could you explain a little bit how meeting the challenge of people coming into cities and the sudden influx of additional population into cities can create additional challenges? Could you expand a little bit on that, maybe talking about the context in Somalia? Mohammed, did we lose you? And I think we lost Mohammed. Anyway, Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so I just want to thank you, everyone that participated, every one of the panelists, Mohamed, Amare, and Ronya. Thank you very much for presenting your insights. It was a quite interesting presentation, of from perspectives that we don't usually hear from. Interestingly, how risk communications can enhance resilience, how this connection, this nexus between food and gender can be used in urban areas, also to not only to enhance resilience, but to empower women in particular. I think it's a wonderful approach that we don't usually take into consideration. As Amara said, is not traditionally included in urban planning, but thank you very much for calling our attention to that. I also want to thank Joao for all the support for this session. And again, very much thank you for joining the Global Summit. I think we're having great conversations and is going to contribute. And I want to call your attention to the session in which we will be launching the new strategic plan. It's going to be a great session, and we hope to count with your presence for that. Without anything else, thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye to everyone.
Thank you.